Hey, everybody, welcome back. We are here. And Jose, what's going on? Good to see you, man, from Lima. That's awesome. I need to turn down the volume on my iPad. I don't know why it was up. But here we are. And I almost considered not doing this today because it is so blazing hot. Michael, how are you? It's good to see you. It is so blazing hot in New York. I can't even begin to explain it. It's we're supposed to have a heat index of over 100 and like 103 Fahrenheit today, which I will say once again I don't remember well enough what that is in I suppose I can look it up what that is in Celsius. What is that? That's exactly 40 degrees Celsius today. And so it's pretty darn warm here in New York today, but I got the air conditioning going on in my office, and you guys are saving me from doing yard work, which is nice. So I appreciate that. The flight that we're going to do today, the approach that we're going to take a look at today is St. Thomas, which is one of my favorites. It's a really cool approach if you've never flown it. I was sort of almost hesitant to use an island approach, and there's quite a few island approaches that I looked at that I kind of turned down as hey, bedbug. Yeah, you did it did cool down for you guys a little bit, didn't it? Europe. See, like I said last week, in the US we start with the air conditioning and then we build everything around that. Whereas I know the rest of the world doesn't operate that way, at least Europe for sure. So I know that when it gets really hot for you guys, it's pretty brutal. Um, but yeah, just another day in where you are, Michael. But yeah, I was watching Formula One last weekend. It was 52 degrees on the track or something. It's insanely hot, but so anyway, one of the reasons why I don't choose a lot of island approaches for doing these classes is because there's not a lot to them. There's no terrain. There's nothing to really worry about in terms of safe altitudes and things like that. I mean, the one thing they kind of do have that's makes them interesting is you get a lot of ground based navigation because there's not a lot of not a lot of infrastructure in a lot of places. This approach is a little bit different in that it does have terrain right near the airport, and so it's got an unusual enough instrument missed approach. Hey, what's going on? Yeah, the temperatures were unbelievable. So it's got a bit of an interesting missed approach because there is terrain involved like right away. There's also some interesting tidbits with initial approach fixes and stuff like that. So it does make this a little bit more interesting as far as island approaches go. So this one is an island approach, but it's a neat approach. One of the things that I realized about the last class that we did, and we did this approach here in Bern, was that it's probably a little bit complicated for teaching the basics of instrument approaches. And there was one particular issue with getting out to this waypoint, this D18.6 waypoint off this VOR. And one of the questions somebody had last week is, isn't that reverse sensing? Because I had the radial tuned, right? The 222 radial, so going in this direction tuned. But I was flying in this direction, so wouldn't that make the needle reverse sensing? And I'm almost like too smart for my own good sometimes. I don't mean that in like an arrogant way. I think a little too much sometimes rather than just doing things the easy way. And so the answer to the question is yes, that is reverse sensing. If you've got a 222 radial tuned in, remember the radial comes out of the VOR, so southwest bound, and you're flying this way with a from flag, even though you're flying to the VOR, because remember the VOR only knows where you are, it doesn't know which direction you're flying. So if you're flying in the opposite direction of the radial that you have tuned, it is a reverse sensing situation. The reason why I did it that way, normally what you would do, so I guess let me take another step back. So when you're talking about a radial on a VOR, so I got thinking about this last week after the class, and I thought to myself, okay, what's the reverse of a radial? Like, like I've always been taught that radials radiate out of the VOR. So here's the VOR up here, the radials come out. So the 222 radial is pointing out this way. But I never really thought about, so why do they do radials instead of doing, 042 degree inbound when that's actually what you're flying? Why do they do radials? What's the point of a radial, and why is there no reverse of a radial? Why is there not a counter radial, or whatever you want to call, whatever you would want to call it? And the reason is because the radial is simply the segment that they want you on, right? This 222 degree radial coming out here is simply the physical location that they want you on. Doesn't matter which direction you're going. You can fly inbound on a radial, you can fly outbound on a radial. The radial is simply to identify the where you are and where they want you to be. So, and the reason why I had, because so normally if let's say ATC called you up and said we want you to fly inbound to the VOR on the 222 radial, right? Which is here. So what you would do is just dial in 042 inbound and just fly 042 inbound with a centered needle, and you're good to go. Why did I choose not to do that? The reason I chose not to do that is because of this segment right up here, which is the outbound, again, the radial, the 243 degree radial that identifies this Berkey intersection. So if I had flown 042 inbound with a 2 flag to this VOR, which is perfectly fine in the normal way you probably should do it or would do it, then I make this left-hand turn to come and cross this radial, I would have to spin my OBS 180 degrees to go from a 042 2 flag inbound to a 234 from flag outbound. And to avoid doing that, I just flew the reverse of the 222 radial, which does, yes, make it reverse sensing. So what that meant is that all I have to do once I cross this 222 is just dial my OBS 12 degrees to one direction, and then I go from 222 to 234, as opposed from having to go to 042 from 042 all the way around to 234. So that just made it easier to fly these next two segments. But just to clarify that, I wanted to make sure that yes, if you're flying inbound 042 and you have a 222 radial dialed in your OBS with a from flag, yes, it is reverse sensing. So I didn't explain that well last week, and I wanted to make sure that was cleared up before I went on. If you're even more confused now than 10 minutes ago, I completely understand that as well. So do I use say intentions or beyond ATC? Yeah, I mean, I've used say intentions, and say intentions is really interesting. I mean, the potential of AI ATC is fantastic. I mean, how far have we come in the last 5 or 6 years, and where are we going to be 5 or 6 years from now? I mean, these things that we couldn't have dreamed of 5 years ago, it's just incredible. But yeah, I have not used beyond ATC. I have used say intentions. I think say intentions is really interesting. I don't use it on a regular basis, but actually, if you fly around Anguilla, you might hear my voice on there. But because they do record, with your permission, obviously, record videos or record your audio. I can do radio calls. And the other one other thing that occurred to me last week, and when we were talking about exactly what I was just explaining, the radial and reverse sensing and so on. the one tool that I have not been taking advantage of in doing this is pausing, active pause. So I don't know why it didn't occur to me to just pause the sim and then we can look at the situation and discuss what's going on. So if there's any questions, um, today we can just pause the sim and look back at the chart and and discuss it, and then continue the flight again. Um, which again, I don't know why that didn't occur to me last week, but it didn't. Um, so the ILS or localizer runway 10 to St. Thomas, and again, this is a really neat approach. I'm going to see if there is a reference chart available for this. There is. So this is the approach. This is the airport and the island here. And the ILS approach, this is runway 10 going in this direction. And so the approach comes right down here. So you can see that you've got the terrain over here. And remember from the chart, there is the missed approach is actually over the St. Thomas VOR, which is somewhere roundabout here. And of course they put the VOR there for a reason. The reason being is because they are you have to be able to physically see a VOR in order to be able to pick it up. So if they put it down here or put it by the airport, this mountain would block it from anybody coming in from the north. So the VOR that you're going to hold on is on top of the mountain. So there's some considerations there in terms of what the approach is. Now this is the approach itself, and like I said, this is so much fun, and it's also terrifying. I've mentioned in the past, like one of the things that I didn't really enjoy about instrument training, and because if you're in a Cherokee flying instrument approaches, flying ILS approaches, going 90 knots down final, say like 80 or 75 knots ground speed, from 5 miles out, that's 7 to 8 minutes of just sitting there, keeping the needle centered the entire time manually. It's challenging, and to have the kind of the visual, it's a little intimidating visually to have the runway end right at the end of the land, right where the water starts. And so that's kind of an interesting thing about this approach. And so there is so mountainous terrain, there is wind shear and turbulence because of the mountains and because of the valleys over here. And interesting notes down here. During visual approaches at night, the surrounding lights reflect off the water, may create visual illusions. There's some notes to visual illusions on the actual instrument approach chart as well. Yeah, and like I said, the approach end of this runway is built on reclaimed land and is surrounded by water. So it's got its challenges for sure. So let's take a look at it here. And I love flying this approach in the 737. It's in the sim, obviously. I don't know if JGG, I don't know if you've probably flown this approach. I don't know if you've flown it in the A321, but anyway. So we got the ILS localizer 10 here I'm forgetting the rest of the name, King Airport here in St. Thomas. And so at the top, obviously, we've got all the radio information. You get your weather 1240, San Juan approach with radar. That's what that R means, is on 128.65. So that's who you'd be talking to on your way in, approaching the airport. St. Thomas Tower 118.8. That's also your CTAF. And the reason there is a CTAF, so CTAF is your common traffic advisory frequency, and that's normally what you would see with a non-towered field, and it's basically a radio frequency that all the pilots that are flying into or out of that field share, and you just broadcast where you are and what your intentions are over the common traffic advisory frequency. Now, the reason this airport, which does have a control tower, also has a CTAF is because of this asterisk, which means it's not always in operation, the tower. So when the tower shuts out the lights and goes home, then the tower frequency becomes the CTAF frequency. And then north of the island, the tower frequency is 118.1, and my guess is the reason for that is probably because, again, the terrain right here north of the field probably blocks the tower frequency, so they probably have what we call a remote communications outlet somewhere, up here where you can talk to the tower from north of the field. And then ground is 121.9. So these are your frequencies as you would use them on the way in. And again, I mentioned before, the ground frequency 121.9, ground frequencies are almost always 129 point something. And so if you're ever on VATSIM, or I don't know if Say Intentions does it, but if you ever hear a controller say ground 0.9, what they're telling you is 121.9. So if they don't give you the first three digits, it's always 121. So then we get to the actual approach itself. So the localizer, again, we've got right way to make radio calls at an untowered airport. So the right way to make radio calls at an untowered airport is you would make depending on your speed. I mean, in a Cherokee, I make my first radio call on CTAF 10 miles out from the airport. And let's say we're coming in here. Let me look up the name of the airport again, because I know it, but it has slipped my feeble mind. What is it called again? TIST Airport. It is Cyril E. King International Airport. Now I've got that squared away. That's how I got about there. So what I would do if I was flying in here, and let's say the tower's closed, I would call it St. Thomas. I wouldn't call it King, because there's maybe people flying into the airport that don't know, what Cyril E. King is, but St. Thomas is universally recognizable, and there's only one airport on St. Thomas, so you're not going to get confused with another airport. So in the Cherokee, I would call from 10 miles out. Let's say I'm at 3,000 feet and I intend to fly the ILS approach. I would say King traffic, Cherokee 56125. We're 10 miles to the north, inbound ILS 10, St. Thomas. And there's an important thing, not important, but there's a little quirk in there that's worth mentioning, especially when you're on VATSIM. If you're making calls on a CTAF, you say the name of either the airport or the location that you're going to. In this case, again, St. Thomas. You say it twice. You say it at the beginning of your broadcast, and at the end. And the reason why you repeat it at the end is because, let's say somebody dials in the frequency halfway through your broadcast and they hear, 3 miles north or 10 miles north of the field, inbound 10, St. Thomas. They didn't hear the beginning of your transmission, so they didn't hear you say St. Thomas, but they heard the rest of it, the kind of the important stuff. And so you say St. Thomas again at the end, just in case somebody came into your broadcast halfway through and they're going to know what airport or what location you're referring to. But at the beginning of the broadcast, you say St. Thomas traffic, but at the end of the broadcast, you only say St. Thomas. You don't say St. Thomas traffic. So I would say St. Thomas traffic, Cherokee 56125, 10 miles to the north, inbound ILS 10, St. Thomas. So that'd be my initial radio call. And then if I was flying, it's kind of weird because if I'm flying an approach, especially because you can be IFR in visual conditions, so there could be other aircraft in visual conditions around, approaching the same airport. And one of my pet peeves is pilots who will say, Like if everybody else is flying visual approaches, they're all VFR, and I'm IFR. And let's use this example. So Toro over here is an initial approach fix, right? I've heard pilots come on the radio and they'll say St. Thomas traffic, Cherokee 56125, Toro inbound on the ILS 10. Okay. If I'm a VFR only pilot and I don't have the approach charts in front of me, I don't know where the heck Toro is. It doesn't mean a darn thing to me. And so what I would say in that particular case, let's see, Kutho right here is 12.5 nautical miles from the ILS DME, and Toro is 13.2 miles. You can see that right here from Kutho. So in that particular case, I would say St. Thomas traffic, Cherokee 56125, 25 miles to the west, inbound ILS 10. Everybody knows what an ILS approach is. Not everybody knows what the waypoints are going to be on that approach if they're not flying an approach, or if they're VFR. But if I tell other airplanes that I am 25 miles to the west, they know how far away I am. And because I tell them I'm a Cherokee, they also know I'm not going 240 knots. So it's going to take me a little while to get there. So all that information kind of feeds into what you're telling people and why. And that's one of the things about radio communications. And that would be a great topic for a class, by the way. But one of the things about radio communication is you have to be brief, you have to be clear, and you have to make sure that what you're saying is understandable to everybody around you, because a lot of people say stuff on the radio that, maybe they say, I'm overhead City Hall inbound 25. What if I'm not from here? I don't know where City Hall is, stuff like that. So, that's correct. That's correct. Well, I would say 25 miles because it's 13.2 miles from Toro to Kutho, and it's 12 miles from Kutho to the airport. So I'm roughly 25. I mean, it's not exactly, because this is you can see there's a turn onto the final approach here, but I'm roughly 25 miles from the airport. I could say 13 miles from Kutho, but again, if the other traffic is VFR and they don't know where Kutho is, that doesn't really help them either. So really what you want to give is a distance from the airport, and a direction from the airport, so that everybody just understands physically where you are. And then once you get closer into the airport, you can fly long straight in finals if you want to. Let's just say you're flying VFR, and you want to fly. You're coming from the west, and you want to fly a straight in approach, visual approach to runway 10. You can fly straight in without entering the traffic pattern. And in some cases, let's say you're flying a business jet, you would probably want to do that. You're not going to fly a traffic pattern. But if I'm in a Cherokee, especially if there's other traffic around, that's kind of antisocial to do. And really what you would want to do is you would want to make a proper traffic pattern entry and then fly a right traffic pattern, a downwind, a base leg, and a final, rather than flying a long straight in final, because other people are flying the pattern and you kind of have to fit yourself in. If there's no other traffic, or if there's nobody broadcasting on the frequency, you can do a long straight in final. The other thing to remember is it is perfectly legal for certain airplanes to be to be approaching and landing at the airport or departing from the airport without a radio. If you're flying like a Piper Cub or a Luscombe or something that never had a radio to begin with, you're perfectly legal to fly in here. And one of the reasons you want to fly a traffic pattern is because you want everything to be predictable. You want other airplanes, if they're in the area, let's say somebody's got the wrong frequency tuned in, and they think they're broadcasting on the radio frequency, but they're broadcasting on the localizer frequency or whatever. If strange things happen, or they're broadcasting on 118.1. and you're on 118.8, strange things happen. And if you fly the correct pattern, there's a much better chance of you seeing somebody else and somebody else seeing you. And that's the big reason why you want to do that. But yeah, we can absolutely do something on radio calls. As you can see, I have a lot of opinions on radio calls. But yeah, I mean, so I would come around and kind of meander over this way and then enter on a 45-degree and right pattern entry for the downwind for 10. And what I would say is the St. Thomas traffic, Cherokee 56125. Another thing, I guess I'll keep going on this. Another thing that some people think makes more sense is to call out instead of calling out your N number, your registration number, just to say the color of your aircraft. Because some people, if there's 4 or 5 aircraft in the traffic pattern, people can get confused about what number is what and who's where. But if I say St. Thomas traffic, Cherokee 56, St. Thomas traffic, white Cherokee entering a 45-degree downwind for 10, they know where I am, the color of my airplane, and what I'm going to do. So that kind of makes it almost a little easier to figure out where I am. And then once you enter the downwind, you would call, say, St. Thomas traffic, Cherokee 56125, right downwind 10, St. Thomas. And that's when you're coming along here. And when you turn your right base leg, you would say St. Thomas traffic, Cherokee 56125, right base 10, St. Thomas. And then when you turn final, you would turn about a 3-mile final. So you'd be somewhere out here normally. And you would say St. Thomas traffic, Cherokee 56125, final 3-mile final 10. And then the last call that I always make is I'll make a call on short final, like inside of a mile, and just say St. Thomas traffic, Cherokee 56125, short final 10, St. Thomas. The reason why is because let's say somebody's about to taxi out onto the runway and they just tune in the CTAF right before they taxi out onto the runway. You want them to know you're coming. The other thing is sometimes I'll see people call short final like 5 miles out. Don't do that. Call short final when you're like within 30 seconds of landing. But we can do radio calls are intimidating. They really are. When I did my private pilot certificate, and my instrument rating for that matter, but when I did my private pilot certificate, the airport that I trained at was a Class D airspace. So it was a towered airport. So from literally the first flight I ever did, my instructor handed me a cheat sheet and said, "Here you go. You're talking on the radio." And it's, the tower knows that, which planes are students and whatnot. And it's actually a lot of fun, but like, just in terms of like talking about radio calls, like a lot of pilots will avoid towered airports because they're afraid of making radio calls. I am the exact opposite. If there's a towered airport around, that's where I'm going, because I want tower to be there, to be able to manage traffic, separate me from other traffic, and I much prefer towered airports. But yes, you do want to announce clear of the runway as well, absolutely. And I almost said that. So you just St. Thomas traffic, Cherokee 56125, clear of 10, St. Thomas, and then everybody knows you're good. So great questions, and I love talking about that stuff. So this is the localizer frequency. This is the ILS DME, which is again, you can tune that in on an older radio and pull the volume knob out, and you'll actually hear the Morse code, the dot dot dash 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 dot. And it is DME, so it does give you distance, which is fantastic. Final approach course is 100, which is pretty wild. A lot of you rarely get like a perfect perfect course like that. Glide slope intercept is Jackie at 2100. That's 2,076 feet above the airport. And again, airport elevation 24 feet, 2076 equals 2100, right? ILS decision altitude is 415 feet, and this is a little higher, than you'll often see for most ILS approaches. It's 415 feet, which is 391 feet above the airport. And again, the reason for that is because of the terrain out here beyond the runway. It's not super high, but it's there. So that's why they want to don't want to let you go as low. My assumption anyway. That's what my guess is. And I'm sorry for moving this chart around all over the place. I'm sure that's probably annoying. Airport elevation is 24 feet. Touchdown zone elevation 24 feet. Same elevation. Your minimum safe altitude is based off the STT VOR, which is this right here. So basically 360 degrees around the STT VOR, you have a minimum safe altitude of 2,800 feet. Now, why is it 2,800 feet? Because of this right here, 1,700, the tallest mountain or tallest hill, whatever you want to call it, in the area is 1,732 feet. And they'll round that up to 1,800 and add 1,000 feet on top of it to give you that 1,000-foot obstacle clearance. So 2,800 feet is where the minimum safe altitude is. Again, this is the United States, so or U.S. territory. So the transition level and the transition altitude are both 18,000 feet. And then the first iteration of the missed approach. Now, this is again interesting. So climb to 620 feet and then a climbing right turn to 2,800 feet via a 180 heading, then turn right, direct STT VOR and hold, or as directed by ATC. So let's take a look at what they're saying here. Let me bring that down a little bit. So here's the runway. This is the ILS DME right here at the end of the runway. So if you go missed, you make a climbing right turn or climb to 620 feet, which because your minimums are 415 feet, it's only a 200-foot climb. So it's really not much of a climb to get to 620. And then you make that right turn to a southerly heading of 180 degrees. And then you continue your climb to 2,800 feet, which is the minimum safe altitude. That's just a coincidence. It's not always like that. And then once you reach 2,800 feet, then you turn right, direct STT VOR and hold. And it is an interesting hold in the sense that it's it's actually a standard right hand turn hold. And again, so this 007 degree outbound heading, I would make just a simple teardrop entry. And let me do my drawing. Let me see here. Let me do my drawing. So I would go, this is terrible drawing. Hopefully I don't fly that. So I would do, yep, that's terrible too. Sorry about that. So I would go straight here to the VOR, and then I would fly outbound 007 minus 30 degrees. So that's what, 347? No, it'd be 337. Yeah, 337. 23. 7 minus 23. 337. Yes, 337. Then I would continue out 337 for 1 minute, and then I would make the right-hand standard rate turn inbound to the VOR, and then you're in the hold. So that's actually not bad drawing, I would have to say. So that's how I would enter that hold. And this is a classic teardrop entry, so there's really no excuse for wanting to do a parallel, which would be like this, and then coming around the opposite direction and then back in. So it's a standard rate, or a standard right-hand turn holding pattern. What's interesting about it is, okay, now you're holding up here, waiting to fly the approach again. So how do you get into the approach again? Um, we'll come back to that actually in a second. So let's see what the notes are. Caution. Again, we saw this earlier in the notes. Pilots may encounter false illusory indications during night approaches to runway 10 using outside visual cues for vertical guidance. And so you may see, if you're coming in here. Oh, whoop, no. Stop that. No, stop that. Go away. Yes, go away. All right. Turn that off. So let's say one of the interesting things about flying at night. Let's say you're coming in here and there are lights on this hill right here. Well, those lights might reflect on the water right here, and you might think this is ground. And you know the runway starts at the end of the land, and so if you think this is solid ground, you could be in trouble. And that's one of the reasons when I flew the approach, the last couple approaches, even if you have you can have a view of the runway. Let's say you're 3 miles out and it's sort of scuzzy, but you can see the runway well enough. The reason why you don't just switch to visual and switch to the PAPIs, the reason why I would stay on the needles for the ILS is exactly for that reason, because those needles aren't going to tell you anything other than, vertical and lateral deviation. They're not going to try and trick you. Whereas if you start looking outside, especially at night, and you see lights outside and they're reflecting off the water, there might be boats out here tied, anchored, and you're seeing lights from the boats. It can totally mess you up. So just stay on instruments as you're coming in. So let's go back here to the notes. And yeah, so don't rely on outside visual cues during night approaches is basically what they're telling you, which is excellent advice. Circling not authorized at night. That is also excellent advice. And a circling approach would be, and they do have circling minimums for this approach. So you could theoretically fly the 10 approach, break that approach off, and come around here and land on 28 if the wind favors 28. But you can't do that at night because there's hills out there. There's stuff to hit. Oh, that's a good idea. Brief and fly at night. It's a fantastic idea. And I'll go on another tangent. I love going on tangents. Let's say you're taking off, just as an example. You're taking off from this runway towards us. One of the things that can happen is they call it a black hole approach. You can have a cloudless night, not a cloud in the sky, VFR, but it's at night. Once you get out over the water, one of two things can happen. There's no lights, in which case you have no horizon, you have no if you were taking off over a city at night, and huge city in front of you, you can, even though maybe you can't see a horizon, you can tell there's a city right there. I know which way is up and which way is down. If you're flying into just complete black darkness at night, even if it's VFR, you should always treat that as an IFR departure. And if you are not an IFR certified pilot, and if you don't have IFR equipment in your aircraft, you should really reconsider what you're doing. And people kill themselves doing this all the time. You see this a ton down in Florida. People taking off out over the water at night, and you may see some lights over here on the hills. You may see some, couple lights here and there from boats, and then you see a couple lights above you from stars, and you start going like this, which way's up, which way's down. Happens all the time. Really something to keep in mind when you're taking off at night. Even if it's VFR, you've got to be careful. If I were to ever do that, and the real problem with that is the acceleration. It's seminographic illusion. When you're accelerating, it makes your inner ear think that your head is going like this. And so you're taking off, you're accelerating, and you feel like you're going like this, but you're not. And you push the nose down right into the ground. It happens all the time. If I were to do a night takeoff over water, to me, I probably wouldn't do it. But if I did do it, it would be an instrument departure. In other words, I'm taking off on my instruments, looking at my instruments. I'm not looking outside. It's not it's not an instrument. It's not a visual departure. Jose, thank you, man. I appreciate it. Appreciate the support, buddy. Um, Separate rating. In the U.S., there is no separate rating for night flight, and I know in Europe there is, which honestly is a decent idea. The only thing you have to do for night flight in the United States, you have to be what we call night current. So, I mean, I'm not night current, for example. I haven't flown at night in years. I don't know. I don't even remember the last time I flew at night. And so, if I wanted to fly at night now, I could, but I can't take passengers. I would have to go out and do 3 takeoffs and landings at night to a full stop. They can't be touch and goes. 3 takeoffs and landings to a full stop at night um, before I could take passengers again at night. So I know in Europe it's a different story, but for us that's how it works. Procedure not authorized when the tower is inoperative, which actually is kind of interesting. So basically no night approaches into no night instrument approaches anyway into this airport. Which sort of makes the fact that they have pilot controlled lighting interesting, because so you can fly a visual approach at night, but you can't fly an IFR approach at night. So pilot controlled lighting on 118.1, which is right here, 118.8 rather. And again, like you click 3 times for low intensity lights, 5 times for high intensity, 7 times for, or 7 times, 5 times for medium, 7 times for high. And the way my instructor taught me was he said, click the crap out of it. He said, just start clicking the thing. Don't count. Just click it as much as you need to get the lights up. Let me see here. So there's an interesting thing. So let's say you go missed and you're in the hold. They have another holding pattern over here. And this one is a non-standard holding. So this is right-hand turns. This is a standard holding pattern. This is left-hand turns, a non-standard holding pattern. Sort of curious as to why they did it that way, but they did. I mean, there's a little terrain here, but it doesn't seem like that big a deal. But how would you get from this holding pattern to start the approach again when the approach is basically perpendicular to where you are holding? And the answer to that question is you would come off the St. Thomas VOR on your last hold. You would do your hold, and then you would make that right-hand turn 270 to the 270 degree radial. Remember, radials radiate out to this waypoint Kutho, and then I would do another teardrop entry. Even though this technically is a parallel entry, I would do a teardrop, but because it's left-hand turns, which are non-standard, it's outbound plus 30, so 310. Math is not my strong point. 310, so I would go out here and then make the right-hand turn around into the hold. So that's how you would get out of this hold and into the next hold to get turned around to come back in on the approach. And the reason why they do it, the reason why they have this hold there to get you turned around, is because Kutho right here is an initial approach fix. So that's one way of, or the way of getting you turned around and back in on the approach. Where is radar and DME required? It just says, if you're doing the alternate missed approach, radar and DME are required. And that's off the San Juan VOR, which is over here. So this hold is probably somewhere down in this area. So now we look at the profile view, and let me bring it up here just a little bit so we can still see the plan view. This is the plan view. This is the profile view. So this is the hold. right here, 280 outbound, 100 inbound at 2,800 feet. Again, this you can see it here, based off of Kutho. So you would fly that hold, get yourself turned around inbound 100. Then when you cross Kutho, you drop down to 2,100 feet, where you intercept the glide slope at Jackie at 2,100 feet. And that's where, again, this Maltese cross is the glide slope intercept. Let me see. For real world flying, I read that one already. When outbound from the VOR to intercept the local IS, is it reverse sensing? In this case, yeah, it would be. If you had 270, if you had 270 dialed in on your OBS, it would be from, because you're going away from the VOR. So yes, it would be reverse sensing. And I would do it that way because yeah, that's how you would do it, and it would be reverse sensing, yes. And then once you cross Kutho and you're outbound 310, you do the 5 T's: turn, time, twist, throttle, talk. So you would turn to the heading of 310. You would start your 1 minute timer. Then you would twist your OBS back into, you would twist it to 100, because that's the inbound heading, the inbound leg of the holding pattern. Turn, time, twist, throttle. You'd adjust your throttle if you need to, and then you would make any radio calls you might need to. So tower or approach might tell you call established in the hold. So that would be the last thing you would do. But yes, it would be reverse sensing from the St. Thomas VOR outbound on the 270 radial to Kutho. Yes, that would be reverse sensing. Hopefully you wouldn't, be too far off, because you'd just be making that turn. But yes, it would be reverse sensing. And that's 9 miles. So it's a decent amount of distance, where you could get some needle deviation. So yeah, so if your needle's off to the right, the way to think about reverse sensing is if you are in a reverse sensing situation, or no, that is not reverse sensing, because you're flying in the same direction you have the OBS tuned. I'm sorry, correction. It would not be reverse sensing because you've got 270 dialed in with a from flag, and you are flying 270. So it is not reverse sensing. I'm very sorry about that. It's not reverse sensing. Let's say for whatever reason you wanted to fly 270 out on the 270 radial right here outbound, and you tuned, and you wouldn't do that. You wouldn't do that. So never mind. So it is not reverse sensing because you're flying in the same direction that the OBS is tuned. OBS is tuned to 270. You're flying 270. It is not reverse sensing. Sorry about that. And I appreciate these questions because reverse sensing, believe me, is tricky. It's tricky to think about sometimes. But so I'm sorry, Michael. It is not reverse sensing, and I thank you for asking that question. So you get yourself turned around back in. We're coming in here to Jackie. Now, is Jackie the glide slope intercept, or is the glide slope intercept 2,100 feet? Glide slope intercept is 2,100 feet. It should be at Jackie, but it might not be. The ILS frequency is that reverse ID using 2VOR. You wouldn't be looking at the ILS frequency on this leg from St. Thomas to Kutho. I wouldn't be looking at the ILS frequency. I would only be looking at the DME on 108.6, waiting for that DME to be 9.0 on a 270 heading, and then that's when I would make my right hand turn to 310 and come around, and in the turn either switch. You would want to either switch radios if you've got 2 radios, or swing your OBS from 310 to 100, or 310 to 100. But I wouldn't be worried about DME off the ILS frequency on this leg, if that makes sense. Because you don't need to be, exact to the foot where this waypoint is. But if you're there at 270 off this VOR at 9.0 nautical miles, you're close enough. And I don't mean to be like, you don't want to be imprecise about it. But the reason why I say you're close enough is that all you're going to be doing from that point is making a right-hand turn outbound, timing it, and then making the left-hand turn inbound to your inbound leg. And the inbound leg is the place where you want to be precise in this particular situation. If that's unclear, let me know. Yeah, you would be using the DME. You could. I mean, you have to have DME. So you have to have DME. I suppose if you didn't have DME, you could, where the localizer needle centers. You couldn't. You could, but it's not how you would do it. So I was gonna say you could, if you had the localizer needle tuned in and the 270 tuned in, and you were right on the 270 degree radial, like perfectly. Once the ILS needle centered, if you had two radios, of course, yes, you would be at Kutho. You would definitely be at Kutho, but that's not how you would do it. You would do it using DME. And then you intercept the glide slope. And we talked before about, standard glide slopes and how steep the glide slope is, etc. This is a standard glide slope, 3 degrees. Bring this down just a little bit more. Standard glide slope, 3 degrees. And again, these are ground speed in knots. And I goofed that one last time too. Or maybe 2 times ago, I goofed that one up. So it is ground speed in knots. It's not your indicated airspeed. And so, let's say on a Cherokee, I would plan on coming in. My Cherokee's in miles per hour. They standardized that in the late 70s to be knots. My Cherokee was made in 1973, so it's miles per hour. So I would plan on coming in about 100 miles an hour, which is 90 knots roughly. So I would need about a 478 foot per minute descent rate to stay on that 3 degree glide slope. And then the missed approach point for the localizer approach. Excuse me. Now, when we look at the localizer approach, again, the localizer approach only gives you, let me see. The localizer approach only gives you left-right guidance on the inbound leg. It does not give you vertical guidance. So you would be the same thing. You would make this hold at Kutho, come inbound 100, drop down to 2,100 feet. Once you cross Jackie, you can drop down to the minimum descent altitude of 620 feet, which is right down here. And you would just drop down to 620, and notice this one does not say CDFA, so it's not a continuous descent final approach, even though I would still fly it that way. I would still fly it that way, but the old-fashioned way to do it is just drop right down to 620, basically as quickly as you can, comfortably. Fly along at 620 feet until you get to the D2.0, so the 2-mile distance marker off of the ILS DME, and then if you don't have the runway environment in sight, you go missed. Even though this is not a continuous descent final approach, there is no even pretend glide slope on the localizer. I call it a pretend glide slope. I would still fly it with a continuous descent rather than what we call dive and drive, which is just drop right down from 2,100 to 1,620. That's 1,500 feet. That's a pretty steep drop. And I don't want to be, especially in IMC, I don't want to be dropping down and then leveling off. And that again makes you feel like you're climbing your inner ear can mess with you. I wouldn't do that, especially because it says right here, let me show you close up. It says right here, missed approach point at 2.0 ITMN, which is, again, that distance measurement off the ILS DME, or Jackie to the missed approach point, which is right here. Jackie to the missed approach point is, you can time it, right? So let's say I'm going 90 knots ground speed, like we were talking about. That's 3 minutes and 40 seconds. If I'm going 90 knots ground speed, it doesn't matter if I'm going 90 knots in a descent or 90 knots, level flight. If I'm going 90 knots ground speed, I'm going 90 knots ground speed. So my descent rate, or the amount of time it would take me to cover that distance, is 3 minutes and 40 seconds. So I would start timing, even if I was flying. I love when they include the timings on the ILS approaches like this for the localizer. Even if I was flying the ILS approach, when I intercept the glide slope at Jackie right here at 2,100 feet and start flying the glide slope down, I would start timing my clock 3 minutes and 40 seconds. Because if the glide slope goes out for any reason, I can still fly to localizer minimums and still might be able to make the approach and landing. Whereas if I don't start the timing on when I'm flying the ILS and I lose the glide slope, I have to go missed. So you might be able to save yourself, and that's old school thinking. A lot of new people don't think that way. Newer pilots don't think that way. You want backups for backups for backups. You always want a backup for everything, and you want to use as many options as you want to have as many options in your bag as possible to use in case you need them. The other thing I will say about these timings, and again, younger pilots will say, nah, you don't have to do it this way. My first instructor, is now 93. And when I started flying with him, he was 78. It was 16 years ago. And he taught me all the things that the old timers have been doing for 50 years. And some of this knowledge is getting lost, and it's really a shame, because it's what kept him alive for 50 years, flying airplanes in instrument conditions, terrible conditions, at night, in the rain, in the weather, reading paper charts, no GPS. These guys knew how to fly. And the one thing he taught me was, let's say we're flying the localizer approach, right? And we're going to come down, we're going to do dive and drive. We cross at 2,100 feet, drop down to 620. We start our timer at Jackie, and we know that we want to time 3 minutes and 40 seconds. What he said was, knock 30 seconds off of that. In other words, only count to 3 minutes and 10 seconds. And if you don't see the runway by 3 minutes and 10 seconds, go missed. He said, because what your temptation is going to be, that last 30 seconds sitting there going like this, can I see it? Can I see it? Can I see it? Or maybe you're going to start sneaking down a little bit, hopefully, hoping you can see it, which is what we call taking a peek. He said, don't do that. He said, knock 30 seconds off of it. Count 3 minutes, 10 seconds. If you don't see the runway, go missed. You're not going to see it anyway. And a lot of pilots nowadays would disagree with that advice. I think it's fantastic advice. Let's see. So if I don't have a GPS for glide slope, can I do a quick reference? So you wouldn't be using GPS for this glide slope. You would be getting this is ground based, because it's the ILS. So it's the radio frequency that's being broadcast from this transmitter right here. So the only you can, on this approach, you can only use GPS until Kutho, which is an intermediate fix and or initial approach fix. But there is no closer intermediate fix inside of Kutho. So you can use GPS to fly to Kutho if you want to start the approach, but you cannot use it inside Kutho. No, correction. You cannot use it inside Jackie. So if you wanted to use GPS, let's say you were at 2,100 feet and you were getting vectored from down here, You could use GPS to fly to Jackie to start the approach at the glide slope intercept final approach fix, but you can't use GPS inside of Jackie. So you'd only be using that. You'd only be using the glide slope transmitter. Let's see. What to know how to calculate the glide slope. So exactly this. So when you want to you want to think about, you don't know exactly, at least in a Cessna 152 or in a lot of like Piper Cherokees, that kind of thing. You're not going to know exactly what your ground speed is unless you have a GPS that gives it to you. So what you would use is you would approximate it with your indicated airspeed. But once you intercept the glide slope on the ILS, then you're just following the needle. You're just making adjustments based on whether the needle shows you high or low. So you don't really have to use the or calculate the glide slope in any way. But it is worth knowing, worth referencing before you fly it. Okay, it's a 3-degree glide slope. I'm going to be flying it at roughly 90 knots. So I know I'm going to need about 500 feet a minute descent to stay on the glide slope. So you have like kind of an initial reference. But once you intercept the glide slope at Jackie, then you're just following the needle and adjusting based on what the needle does. So yeah, so no GPS in the aircraft. Exactly. So then once we get to the runway, these are your lighting. This is the lighting in the runway environment. You've got your runway end identifier lights, which are the 2 flashing strobes at the end of the runway. You've got the PAPI, which is the precision approach path indicator, the 4 lights in this case, on the left-hand side of the runway, showing you, your glide path to the runway. And then it gives you your basic missed approach again, climb to 620, climbing right turn to 2800 via a 180-degree heading. So in other words, climb to 620, turn right 180, and climb. That's what they want you to do. On the ILS, your TCH is threshold crossing height. So you're going to be at 55 feet above the threshold of the runway when you cross it if you are perfectly on the ILS. And your touchdown zone elevation is 24 feet, which is also the airport elevation. Your visibility requirement. This is rather kind of a larger. I don't know how to put it. Larger or longer distance visibility requirement than you would normally see on an ILS. 1 1/8 miles, and that's because the runway ends right at where the ground, where the terrain ends, right? So you've got to be able to see a little bit further ahead to be able to make this approach safely. And again, that's another part of the reason why the ILS height or the decision altitude is a little bit higher than what you would normally expect on an ILS approach, which is about 200 feet. Localizer minimums are 620, which is about 600 feet above the ground. Visibility minimum for a category A and B aircraft, that's any aircraft up to 120 knots of flying the approach 120 knots, you would need 1 mile visibility. Anything category C or D, which is like your Embraers, your Boeings, your Airbuses, you need 1 3/4 miles. And the circle to land minimums, again, circle to land would be, what just happened? What are you doing? Yeah, well, let's go. Circle to land would be if you flew this approach to runway 10 and then broke it off and I'm going to use my tools. If you flew the approach to 10 and then broke it off and came around and landed on runway 28, that's a circle to land approach. That's some fine drawing right there, ladies and gentlemen. And your minimums for that are for a category A airplane, 90 knots, be 660 feet. Category B is 120 knots, 700 feet. So basically, the faster you're going, the higher the minimums are for that type of an approach. And yeah. I mean, I'm not a fan of circle land approaches to begin with, but you can do it. So it's interesting because when I first looked at this approach, I thought to myself, yeah, I love this airport, but it's not that interesting. There's not a lot to it, but there really is. It's a neat approach. It is straightforward enough, but it's also a really fun approach and one I like a lot. So we're gonna get going here. Let me fire up Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024. And as a matter of fact, I haven't flown um, Sim Update 5.1 yet, which is kind of funny. I don't know why it's funny, but um, so flying this approach. Let me see here. Do, do, do. Flying this approach. So what we're gonna do? We'll take off out of. Let's see. We'll take off runway 10, and we'll just make a right hand turn here around. We'll actually basically fly the mist. We'll make a right hand turn to 180, and then we'll come here and we'll cross. We'll actually cross Kutho, unlike me who missed it with the drawing here. We'll cross Kutho. We'll fly the course reversal, the holding pattern, and then inbound we'll fly the ILS approach in, and then we'll go mist, and we'll again fly the same thing except for here we'll come up here, then we'll fly this hold, and I'll do one full turn in the hold so you can see it, and then we'll fly over here to Kutho again, and then well me and my drawing, and then we would fly it out and around, one more turn in the hold, and then over here to Kutho, and again that turn. It would almost make sense actually. It almost makes sense actually to take off and basically fly the mist and fly this hold, and then come over to Kutho and do the course. Oh, whoops, Kutho and do the course reversal, and then inbound. We'll see. Oh, by the way, yes, Michael, you can. I had somebody else ask me that. You absolutely can. So we shall see. Let's just take off, and we'll go straight out here to Kutho, and we'll do the course reversal. So let me see. I'm gonna magically switch sides. Oh, there we go. Thank you. There we go. I have magically switched sides. And we're going to go here. We're going to go here. We're going to switch aeroplanes. I've been doing some really exciting stuff, by the way. I'm gonna do the 152. We're gonna stay in the mighty Cessna 152. I've been doing some really exciting testing in the sim, and I cannot wait to show you guys what I have come up with. I am pretty jazzed. It's something completely different than what I've been doing, and it's very exciting. I have what my wife refers to as COD, so I have to change the. I don't understand why they don't let you just save a tail number for a particular airframe, but they don't. My latest project addresses a similar weirdness that they never sort of addressed. Let's see. Winds are good. VFR. So let's go live weather, traffic off, and let's get on the runway. And what do I need to do here? I need to start my headset, or start my head tracking rather. Okay. So let's no. No, can I just do that? Okay, let's see if we get this here. So, yeah, I've been working for the last 2 days, nonstop on something completely different than anything I've ever done before. Let me set my mixture and all my stuff up so that my airplane doesn't turn off as soon as the sim loads. And we will fly the ILS 10. And the other thing we'll do is we'll fly the localizer version too, just because the localizer version of this approach is classic dive and drive. And so I'll show you why I don't like that, and hopefully you'll understand from seeing it why I'm not a particular fan of that approach, that kind of approach. So my latest project is something that similar to what I was just talking about. Why won't they let you save a tail number to an aircraft? Because I use Volanta, and I have several Piper Warrior flights from, like, you know, Atlanta to DFW, which were not Piper Warrior flights. They were 737 flights, but because they wouldn't allow me to change the because yes, I'm giving you a teaser right now, but because they won't let you change or save a tail number, and I forgot to change the tail number, thus my it got recorded incorrectly in Volanta. So that's kind of annoying. The other thing that's annoying is you can't have settings profiles in the sim. In other words, I fly all kinds of stuff. I love flying the Cessna 152. I like flying the Boeing 777. Sometimes I'm flying the 737 to St. Martin. Sometimes I'm flying the 737 to LAX. And I want different settings for those different scenarios. So why can't you save settings profiles? That is the heart of my new secret project. And it's not far off. We're like, what? What's going on here? Oh, okay. Am I out of fuel? I probably am. Knowing me. All right, let's get some fuel here. We want some fuel anyway. Let's go. I'm gonna go 8 gallons. Let's go 6 gallons that side, 8 gallons the right side. Hopefully the airplane will balance itself out. So that's kind of the heart of my secret project, and it's not far off. My secret project will be revealed within the next, like, maybe even 2-3 days. So, let's get rid of that. And, yeah. So what's the word here? Fuel valve is on. Hold on here. Fuel valve is on. Mixture is rich. Carb is cold. There we go. Alright, so now let's get our... Yeah, let's get that. And let's get our... We're below sea level on our altimeter. Let's get our charts up here. And bring this over yonder. And... this is the other thing when I do might take a second here. When I do classes like this, I try to use airports that everybody has. I don't want to why is this not working? I don't want to use airports that I like to use solo airports, handcrafted airports from the sim, because that way if you want to go fly the approach, you have the airport, but at the same time it's not always possible, and so I'm using a third-party airport for this one, and I'm hoping that eventually, please tell me there was no update to this and I missed the update. Let me see. Nope. All right, so we just have to wait here for a second until this. There we go. And go right on over here. Can I get rid of the drawing? There we go. All right, so that was funny. So here we, what? No. So what we're gonna do, we'll take off, go the right 180 to 2800, and we'll come over here to Kutho. And let's see here. Radio frequencies 110.1. Look at that, 110.1. 1086 in the backup. And I got some like weird person gesturing at me on my own stream. 1086. That's the St. Thomas VOR. And I want the same thing down here, except for I want them in different in the opposite order. Alright, there's 1086. Come on. So, let's see. The outbound minus 30 is going to be 23. What's 360 minus 23 is 333. Me and math. There's some it's 337. Me and math are not the best of friends. And this I would want on 337 as well, just because that's what it's tuned to. So the reason why I want both frequencies in both sides is because I can only get the DME off of this, but I need DME 2 times to be able to fly this. So I need DME to fly the ILS. I don't need it, but I'd like to have DME to fly the ILS, but I also need DME to identify Kutho on the missed approach, if all that makes sense. Hey Eddie, what's going on? Thanks a lot, appreciate it. So let's do this. Let us matriculate. All right, hopefully there's no flaps. Flaps are up. Trim is looking good. All right, so we'll do it in VMC first. I'm going to release my parking brake. I'm also going to adjust my altimeter because I know the airport elevation should be about 24 feet, and I don't want to be lower than I think I am. And there's a good all right, 70 knots. We can go flying now. All right. So we'll climb what, to 600 feet? Climb to 620. And it is beautiful down here. You can see where the runway ends right there. And I also cannot fly from outside the airplane. I cannot do it, no matter how hard I try. So once we hit 620, we'll go. I wonder if there's a way to create, if you can have the like a track on the like a line on the chart of where I've been. So we're going to turn right to a heading of 180 and climb to 2,800 feet. And then once we do that, we'll continue our turn. So I'll let the nose come down here just a little bit. Alright, so climbing about 75, 80 knots. Let's see here. Whoops. Engine instruments all looking good. 180 to 2,600. So, look how beautiful this is. People wonder why I fly around here all the time. It's amazing. And this is such good scenery. Like the Asobo scenery around the airport is fantastic. All right, 180, 2600. Keep it climbing, baby. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna make that right-hand turn, and we're gonna want to center the needle. So now I'm gonna want to switch this to 108.6. And so as not to confuse myself, which is relatively easy to do, I'm going to switch the other one to the ILS frequency, because I don't want to get two needles doing the same thing, even though they'd be doing the same thing. All right, so we'll keep on keeping on here. Oh, 1,000 feet. Check flaps up. Carp heat is off. We're good. So coming up on 2,800. So the scenery is the airport is not stocked, but the area around it is, which is pretty. But the area around it is just beautiful. So climbing to 2,800. And relatively, I mean, see what I mean? Like, if you're climbing out over this at night, there is nothing to look at. All right, so now I'm gonna keep going straight ahead. I'm not gonna cheat. There's 2,800 feet, but I am also going to now level off because I don't need to keep climbing. So I'm gonna let the nose drop. I'm gonna turn my OBS. I already have a 2 flag. So let's find out where. Oh, whoopsie. Things you don't want to hear your pilot say. Oh, whoopsie. Let's get that needle in. Alright, so about heading a 330. And I'm still climbing because I haven't changed my power. Why did I not change my power? Alright. So the needle is a little bit off to the right, so I'll come to the right here a little bit just to bring that needle back. So now we are heading for the St. Thomas VOR. Come back down to, sorry, I'm trying to read it. Try and night. Oh, we could do that. We could do, yeah, I suppose we don't have to. Oh, you know what? Those buggers. They changed my DLSS file, and so look at. I don't know if you can see the ghosting on the nose, but anyway, so we're 4.0 from the VOR. Come down to 2,800 feet, and in my particular case, I want to go outbound 337 once we cross the VOR, which is about the heading that we're on. So let's see. I'll show you two interesting things at the end. I'll show you a night departure over water. And then we'll do the approach back in. So again, I'm 330 with a 2 flag, and the needle is to the right. So I'm going to point myself a little bit to the right of 330 to bring that needle back in. 2.5 nautical miles, 2.4. So once we get in closer, whoopsie. Once again, words you don't want to hear from your pilot. Once again, once we get within like a mile, that needle's going to start going all over the place. So you just basically ignore it and hold your heading until this flips, until the flag flips. Now, when you're doing an instrument check ride for your instrument rating, your tolerances on the check ride are plus 100 feet minus 0. So in other words, I'm supposed to be at 2,800 feet right now. So I can be anywhere between 2,800 and 2,900 feet. If I am at 2,700 feet, 2,780 feet, I fail. So it's intimidating. All right, so we're waiting for this needle to cross. Hey, Kenny, what's going on? Waiting for this needle to flip. And you can see the CDI is deviated all the way over to the right, but that's because we're right in close to the VOR. This is gonna flip here pretty soon. There's the flip, so 337 is the heading I want. So I'm gonna turn right to a heading of 337. And again, keep an eye on everything. Altitude. Now I wanna turn this to a heading of 187. And let's see there. And I figure I started at about 20 seconds. And yes, we want to do this by hand. 187. Because this is cool. We actually got IMC anyway. Because instrument flying is fun. Alright, my heading is not correct. 337. And I got about another 15 seconds before I want to start making my turn. So what I'm going to do is we're going to make a standard rate right-hand turn around to an inbound 187. We're going to try to catch that perfectly here. That's about right. So make a standard rate turn. You get the wingtip of your little airplane here on right on that hash mark. That is a standard rate turn, 3 degrees per second. I'm looking for 187, which is about right here. So turn, time, twist, throttle, talk, so we're good. Keep my turn coming. And we don't know what the wind is doing, so it takes your first turn in the hold kind of tells you. So if this needle doesn't start coming in by the time the 180 is at this little hash mark right here, then I'm going to stop turning and wait for the needle to start coming in. And it's not, so we're going to hold right here. And we're just going to wait for that needle to start coming in. Once that needle starts coming in, we'll resume our turn. Because you don't know, if you've got a tailwind on the way out, you could get pushed quite a ways out from the inbound leg. Let's see, this is probably, well, yeah, this is good for right now. Still not coming in. We've only got 2 miles to the VOR, so don't have a whole lot of time before we. So I am assuming that the wind is out of. Okay, here we go. See the needle starting to move, so we'll start turning to 187. I'm assuming the wind is sort of out of 120, 150, somewhere in there. We'll turn right to the heading of 187. And then we'll do one turn in the hold, and we'll see if we can nail the hold inbound. There's 187. Yeah, it's got to be. We were on. I'm gonna do a 50-second outbound. So we're just 0.9. We're gonna wait for this flag to flip here, and then we're gonna do and again, this needle is gonna start deviating like crazy as we get in close to the VOR, and we're gonna get updrafts off this terrain. So be aware of that. So we're gonna just wait right here, hold this heading. And instead of flying 007, I'm gonna fly 150 for about 45 seconds once I get out there. So there's the flip. So again, standard rate right-hand turn. Hold it right there. And in this particular case, because the wind is coming from behind me, and it's pushing me away from the course that I want to, the inbound course, I really want to make sure I stay on that coordinated turn, that standard rate turn, and don't don't lessen my bank and wind up further out than I want to be. I'm trying to keep myself tighter in. Because the wind is blowing me that way. Let's go about 0.15. Altitude is good. About 0.15, and we'll do it for 40 seconds. I'll do it until right there. And regardless of how this turns out, we're gonna do we're gonna do the 270 leg over to Kutho to start the approach again. So I'm gonna have to turn to 270 and then swing this to 270 relatively quickly. That's you know what? That's why I love instrument flying, Eddie. Instrument flying is just okay. There we go. So let's go right hand turn. Instrument flying is my type of flying because it's just predictable. It's boring. Good instrument flying is boring flying, and I love boring flying because boring flying is safe flying. So keep an eye on this needle. And in this case, I don't want to be turning. I don't want to be overturning because I'm turning into a headwind. It's still not coming in. So it's an even stronger wind than I thought. So let's see. Came out about 45 seconds. We are tighter in by about half a mile, but let's see here. It blew us out a good ways. We're never gonna get in. All right, come on, there we go. All right, so I'll cross the. We'll intercept the 187. Probably actually about a little less. So now what I want to do, as soon as that flips, I'm turning right to 270 right here. There we go. Alright, now I'm going to swing this to 270. Don't want to get too crazy. We'll have to, now Michael, the question you asked earlier will become very relevant, because if we get this wrong, we're going to intercept the wrong way. So it's a from flag, 270, needles to the right, but we're flying 270, so it is regular sensing. So I'm going to fly by 290, 20-degree correction. So we're supposed to be 270, but the needle's to the right, so you want to come to the right of the heading, by 20 degrees is good. So 290, 295. So we're bringing that needle in now. 6, yes. So once the needle centers, then we come back here, and I've failed my check ride because I've busted my altitude. Now we'll come back here to 270. And now we will fly to our next hold. So I'm going to go about 265 and see if I can bring that needle back in. Michael, that's awfully nice of you. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate the support. I'm glad you guys enjoy this, because I enjoy this. Alright, needle is centered, 270. Now, the cool thing about this is, I think the wind is coming from about 150, 120, somewhere in there. So now we've got the needle centered. I'm on a correct heading, 270. So now, if this needle starts to deviate, that's going to tell us what the wind is doing. So if the wind is coming from the left, it should push the needle a little bit to the left. So we'll see here. And remember, Kutho is 9 DME. You can see here. So we'll keep flying to Kutho. And then once we cross Kutho, again, a teardrop entry, but this is going to be in the other direction because these are left-hand turns, which is non-standard in the, so right traffic is standard in, right traffic, or, no, left traffic is standard for the traffic pattern. Right-hand turns are standard for holds. Don't ask me why. Hey, Mike, what's going on? This time it's me who's sweating. It's like 40 degrees over here, Celsius, which means nothing to me. Only Fahrenheit means anything to me. Alright, we're 100 feet high, but we're correcting down. So there's really not much wind. I mean, usually you expect the wind in this area to be out of the south. Or to be out of the east, rather, which is seems about what it is. So it could be that I'm just an incompetent pilot, and I couldn't get the hold correct. That's possible. So we're gonna cross Kutho, outbound plus 30 because it's left-hand turns, and we'll fly 310. Turn, time, twist, throttle, talk. So we'll turn to 310. Yes, that's exactly what it is. So we'll turn to 310. We'll start our timer. As you can see here, it's a 1 minute hold. And then we will twist this around to 100. And then we'll flip it because that's going to be the ILS frequency now and not the St. Thomas frequency. So we've got to flip frequencies. We're at 8.0. We're getting pretty close here. And you can see they give you a good distance. And they give you a real good distance, you know? It's just to give you time to do what you need to do. And this is why flying instruments in slow airplanes can be interesting sometimes. So there's 9.0. Let's turn right to a heading of 310. Turn. Stay at our altitude of 2,800 feet. 310. Time. Call it at 5 after. Twist. We actually don't really technically have to twist because the ILS frequency only broadcasts 100, but we do this just for set 100 just for situational awareness. And then I can flip radios. So this one now is on the St. Thomas VOR, which we'll need for the mist, and this is on the ILS frequency. And now we have to remember it's left-hand turns. See, that's the biggest thing is the no wind, right? When it's super hot out. I'm in the only cold room in my house, which is kind of cool. You guys probably get sick of looking at the top of my head for an hour and a half. There's 5 seconds. Alright, left-hand turn. And I want to make sure I keep that dot right on the horizon there to try to keep my altitude from dropping. So this time, because we're in a left-hand turn to 100, once this 100 gets to this hash mark, this 45-degree hash mark, if the needle is not coming in, then I'll hold on like about a 145 heading. If it is, I won't. So this is a 45-degree hash mark, and they're great to use for instrument flying. And the needle is coming in, ladies and gentlemen. We are displaying a high degree of skill. Come on. A moderately high degree of skill. So we'll come over here to the right a little bit. I'm 250 feet above my assigned altitude. I mean, legally IFR you can be plus or minus 300, but you should be on your altitude. So heading 110 to correct back for this needle. Now the glide slope is above us, so we have two choices. We're inbound to Kutho right now. Once we cross Kutho, we can come down to 2100 and then wait at 2100 to intercept at Jackie, or because the glide slope is above us, we can just wait until the glide slope needle centers, and then we can start our descent somewhere out here between Jackie and Kutho, which is my preference. I mean, that's the way I would do it, just because I don't want to have to descend, level off, then start a descent again. And the needle's starting to come back. The airplane really wants to climb. Alright, so needle's coming back. Now we'll come here to the left a little bit. I'm gonna hold 110 for a little bit and see if there is indeed a little bit of wind out of like 115 or 150 rather. So Kutho is at D12.5, so we just crossed Kutho right now. So what we can do is put in some carb heat, and actually this is probably a better way to do it in this particular case. So in this type of continental engine, you can, the joke is that the engine was built to do two things. Number one, make ice, and number two, generate power for flight. So I just put on the carb heat, which is right here, and the reason I did that is to keep the airplane from to keep the engine from generating carb ice as I get into the lower green bands on the RPM. So now when we get to about 2100 feet, I'm going to bring the power back in. So we're going to level off now at 2100. I'm going to turn the carb heat off, and then we'll level at 2100 feet and come left here a little bit to 100. And now we just stay here until Jackie at 7.5. So normally I would have probably waited and intercepted the glide slope higher, but the downside of that would be I would be at a low power setting from, like, because right now I'm at 2400 RPM, which is a pretty decent power setting. I mean, it's cruise power, right? If I intercept the glide slope out here, like up in this area, and make a long descent like that, I'm going to be at reduced power for a really long time. And 105 is not doing it, so let's try 110. So being at reduced power for 10 minutes is a really good way to get carb ice. And if you get carb ice, your engine no longer functions, which is unfortunate. So I'd rather come down, level off, add some power, fly along, and then we'll intercept the glide slope at Jackie. So figure probably about 400 feet a minute on the about 400 feet a minute for the ILS. I'm at 110 right now. It's 100 is the inbound heading, or the inbound course rather. But there's a little bit of a wind coming off our right, so we're about a mile from Jackie. So now the glide slope needle is coming in. So now I'm going to put in the carb heat again. I'm going to put in, yeah, I'll put in a notch of flaps, and then drop the power to about 2,000. And we'll start coming down here. Now about 400 feet a minute. We'll see how that does. And we are slightly right, of course. I'm going to come back to 100 and see if that corrects it. Add back a little bit. See? Exactly, 105. So I'm not really looking outside the window right now. I'm going to hold 105. Now I got to start being a bit more precise. 105 and about 300 foot per minute descent rate. And we'll see how that does for us. See if those needles start to center a little bit. One of the things to think about is if you've got needles deviating, right? Like this needle is deviating to the right. This needle is deviating a little bit up. Don't try to correct them both at the same time. Try to stabilize them. Try to stabilize them first of all. And I've got the glide slope needle is now spot on, so I can start my descent again. And again, 110 on the heading. And that needle's coming back in. So it looks like it's going to be like somewhere between 105 and 110 on the heading. And about 300 feet per minute on the descent. So I just, let's see. Minimums are 415. Alright, and I gotta stop yanking on the controls here and just let the airplane settle here a little bit and see what it wants to do. But you can see why instrument approaches in small airplanes it can be kind of tedious because you're just sitting here for a long time trying to hold these needles centered, you know. And we just got a little bit of an updraft, so the needle's dropping, but what goes up must come down. So you always expect a wind shift right about 1,000 feet, which is what we got. Plus we've got terrain off to the left, which will make a difference. Alright. Carb ice is dependent on temperature and dew point. When your temperature and dew point, it's interesting actually. When your temperature, the temperature of the air going through the carburetor drops by as much as 70 degrees Celsius, Fahrenheit rather. So you can be outside in 90-degree weather and it's humid. You can get carb ice. As a matter of fact, it's perfect for carb ice. Still a little bit high here. I'll pull a little bit of power out. See, and like you think, oh, this is easy stuff in a 150 going nice and slow. It's not without its challenges. Walking and chewing gum at the same time. A 110. Now I really want to get on that 300 feet a minute and stay there. 300 to 400 feet a minute. 110. If these needles, either of these needles deflect fully, I have to go around. There's 415. Let's go missed. Alright. Establish a positive rate of climb. Flaps coming up. Whoopsie, which means we lose some lift. Now we're going to climb to 620 feet. Runway heading, climb to 620 feet. And once we hit 620 feet, we're making that right-hand turn. Now, let's get some weather involved here. 100. Now let's make my life difficult. There we go. 600 feet. Right-hand turn to 180. No. I want bad weather. Ooh, 180. Alright, let's just go back to rain. I just want everything. There we go. Alright. Now 180, we're gonna climb to 2,600 feet. I'm gonna flip these. Now the fun begins. Yes, the Venturi effect. That is absolutely what that is. It's the same principle that makes a wing fly, by the way. So, and then alright, so we're climbing to 2,600 feet, 2,800 feet. 17 climbing 2,800. Southerly heading, we're perfect. Alright. And I had a guy in my Cherokee who lost the engine on short final over a lake because of carb ice. That woke him right up. Alright. This is what we like. IMC, baby. Alright. 2,300 climbing 2,800. 108.6 is in. 25 climbing 28. This time we'll just do one turn and right, so we don't. 26 climbing 28. The main thing I'm looking at is this, and then just cross-checking instruments. So now 50 feet below our cruise altitude, we'll pull some power out. Now I'm just keeping that dot right on the horizon there. And we want a 2 flag. And we want a centered 2 flag. Where are you going to center, Mr. 2 flag? Come on. Alright, 330. Alright, 2,800, 330. Let's just keep moving to center it. Let's go 340. Alright, so 340. Now, one thing that I didn't do well the previous time outbound, so now I've got a centered flag. I'm heading 340, centered flag. And now whichever way this needle deviates is going to tell me where the wind is coming from, and that's one of the things that you can use to check that. You should always know where the wind is coming from. So that's why you want to be precise on your headings and be precise in your flying. So you see the needle starting to deviate to the left. But again, I need to correct back to the left here a little bit. 340. So if this needle keeps correcting to the left, because I just changed the weather, obviously, so whatever we were doing before is out the window. So 340, and that needle is deviating that way, which means the wind is blowing me that way. If that makes sense. Drop the nose a little bit here. Alright, 3.1 miles. Should take us about another 20-25 minutes. Just kidding. See how this needle's getting pushed over? Which means the wind coming out of my left, pushing me to my right. I'm going to correct back to about 330, correct? You only want to correct maybe 5 to 10 degrees just to see what that, see if that stabilizes the change. Like, you don't even need to, the one thing, especially if you're in close to the VOR, which we are 2 nautical miles from the VOR, if you start making a big correction to the left to try to bring the needle back, you can go through it the other way and you wind up doing this, you know? So job number 1 is just stop the needle from moving. Once you stop the needle from moving, then you're in business. And I just crossed over the extended center line of the runway because that just moved from left to right. Underneath me, that's tuned to the ILS, which is right here. So that's actually useful information too. Alright, so now I'm going to come back to 340 and just wait there. So outbound minus 30. So 337. I mean, we're going to actually go straight through the VOR on this heading. And count 1 minute. This is outbound minus 30. So to make the math easier, just think 010 minus 30 is 340. And I need math to be easy because I'm mathematically challenged. And there's the from flag, so that we'll start the count at 30. So turn, time, twist, throttle, talk. We don't have to turn. We did start the timer at 30, twist. So now we need to twist the OBS around to 187. There's an easier way to do it. Because that is the inbound heading. Now, why does the needles, or why is the to from indicator showing 2 when we're flying away from the VOR? It's because this heading of 187 would take us to the VOR. Remember, the VOR knows where you are. It doesn't know which direction you're going in. So we will make a standard rate right-hand turn. Get the little wing on the hash mark and just hold it right there. And hold the dot of the little airplane on the horizon there. Just hold it right there. And then cross-check your other instruments. So I'm looking here, then looking here. Looking here, looking here. Looking here, looking here. Looking here, looking here. Just cross-checking the whole time to make sure everything stays steady. But the main thing I'm looking at is this right here. Keep that dot right on the horizon. The needle's starting to come in, so we're going to keep our turn going, and hopefully we'll get it right here at 187. So there's a little bit of a tailwind, that wind out of like 330 somewhere over there. Alright, we're 2 miles from the VOR, so I'm going to turn to, let's say, 200. And see if I can bring that needle back. Again, you don't want to chase the needle when you're within like a mile, of the VOR, which we're Right now, 1.5. But you also don't want to like just ignore it and let it do whatever it wants. So, again, I've sort of steadied it, but that's good. It's still going to the right. Try 210. So, should flip relatively soon. Once it flips, we're going to head to 270, and I'll twist the OBS to 270. We're within half a mile. We have failed our instrument check ride because we busted our altitude. It's going to flip any second now. And there's the flip, so we'll turn right, 270. And in the turn, I'm going to switch this. And because we flew through the VOR, that 270 is going to be off to our right, so we're going to have to correct here a little bit. I'll try 290. We'll see what happens. Actually, I'm going to try more because that needle is fully deflected. So I want to get back on. Whoopsie. See, I knew this was dropping even before I looked at it because of the attitude indicator. All right, so there we go. That needle's coming back now. So let's come left here, 290. Stop descending airplane. All right, let's see if this will hold. Speaking of which, how much? Okay. Learned that lesson the hard way. All right. Come back left here. So we want 270 with a front flag. It's normal sensing because we're flying in the same direction that that our OBS is tuned. By 275, see what happens. I have a feeling that's going to bring it back in already. So yeah, see, 275, 2.7. So we're gonna stay right here until 9.0. Maybe a little updraft there. Stay right there until about 9.0, and then we're gonna turn right to 310 because it's left-hand turn, so it's outbound plus 30. And then I know. Then once we're going outbound plus 30, which is 310, we'll flip the nav 1 radio to the ILS frequency. So alright, come back here. Left just a little bit. Alright. Hopefully we're settling down here a little. And I'm also keeping an eye on my RPMs because they will change with a fixed pitch propeller airplane. You gotta check that as well. So I'll come back left here a little bit, 275. I do get some cloud turbulence. I don't know if it must be Real turb gives me cloud turbulence, not crowd turbulence. I hope I get crowd turbulence on my stream. That'd be great. Alright. Now. 6.9 miles. So we got 2 miles to go. And we're going up and down and up and down. Come back right here just a little bit. Alright, 275. Stop that. Airplanes can be obstinate. Two 7.5. 7.8 miles. We got 1.1 now to go. The instrument check ride is insane because you're sitting there the entire time focusing on that 100 feet of altitude that determines your fate. It's crazy. When I was driving to the airport for my instrument check ride, I had some really positive thoughts going through my head. Let's see, 8.7, so once we hit 9, we'll turn right to 310. I was literally thinking to myself as I was driving to the airport, I was literally thinking, why are you even bothering? You're going to fail. You're going to be so bad. There's 9. I didn't sleep a wink the night before. And I don't think it was because of the check ride, though I suppose it probably was. There's 310. Time is top of the hour. Yeah, Eddie. Yeah. And I remember just thinking to myself, you are going to fail. Why are you even going? Like, I was really bad. And I freaking nailed it. It was the worst. It was still the worst weather I've ever flown in. Only because it was icy and like it was nasty. Windy, icy, spitty. I wouldn't have gone flying that day, but it was my check ride. And my examiner was a NetJets captain. And he was one of those dudes who's like, the airplane is a utility. It is a 5 seconds till our left hand. The airplane is a utility. It is to be used. It is, it's like a hammer. If you need to put a nail into wood, you use a hammer. And his attitude was, if you need to get from point A to point B, you use an airplane. And he asked me every single question he could have possibly asked me for my oral exam. So I'm keeping an eye again right here, keeping that dot right on the horizon, checking there, checking my altitude back here, down here, back here, down here, back here, down here, back here. That's how you do it. And again, you see that? This is a lagging indicator. This is going to tell you faster anything that these are going to tell you. And I pretty much nailed that. Pretty much nailed that. Alright, well, let's go 100. We'll roll out. And let's see here. So 14.3. Kutho is at 12.5. And I need to come down a little bit. Which is what the airplane's been wanting to do for the last 20 minutes. He asked me every possible question he could have asked me. And the same dude had failed one of my friends a couple of months earlier on the same check ride, so I was like, Alright, so try hitting a 105 I'm gonna pull about 50 RPM out just to descend a little bit. So 12.5 is Kutho, then we can drop down to 2100. There we go. Now again, we'll go car beat on, power to 2000 and just let it drop. Keep the heading 105. But I wouldn't do this especially in this weather, I wouldn't do this. But now we can let it drop to 2100 feet. Come back left a little bit because that localizer is deviating. 25 for 21. $24 for 21. All right, I'm gonna hold 100 at about 2,200 feet. I'm gonna start bringing the power back in. All right, carb heat off, bring in some power. Come back left to 100. Try to get that left deviation corrected here. Alright, there we go. Get that needle back. So 7.5 is Jackie, so about 8 nautical miles. What I want to do, or what I really want to do, is correct my deviation. Ay. Correct that left deviation. Alright. I wasn't about to use a bad word. I was just gonna... The family-friendly environment here. Alright. 8.4. At about 8.0, I'm gonna go... That's about half mile short. I'm gonna go carb heat. I'm gonna go notch of flaps, keep the nose down, and I'm gonna bring some power out so that once we cross 7.5, we'll be in that descent with the glide slope captured, hopefully. All right. So again, we don't. I mean, 85 knots. We don't know what our ground speed is. Come back right here a little bit. So now what I want to do, keep that dot just a hair below the horizon there. Should do us well. Come back right just a little bit. Maybe a 105. 1800 for 415. Start counting it down. .05 is where I want to be. Oh, no. 17 for 415. No. These airplanes, stop doing this. Okay, come back to 110 and let's try to settle at about 500 feet a minute down here. Come on. Boy, this thing does not want to descend for some reason. It's been wanting to descend for the last half an hour, now it won't. 11 for 415. Now that wind just shifted at 1,000 feet. It always does. You can always count on it. Of course, the hills to our left probably affected the wind. So, needle's coming back. 900 for 415. Just gonna hold it right on 100 and see what that does. Oh, you are. Now I've got the runway, but I literally just got the runway as I got a full needle deflection down. Full needle deflection means you go missed. I'm gonna stay on the needle, see if we can't save this one. 105. Yeah, alright. So we broke out. So what we shall do, we shall land, and then let's do a night. Just real quick, let's do a night departure. I was talking much earlier. If some of you might not have been here. So mixture is rich. Carb heat is. I'm gonna turn carb heat off. Need the power back here. Second notch of flaps, and we'll do a what's called a black hole departure, which is a departure over water at night. And I'll do it in. We'll do it in overcast weather, so hopefully there won't be a. Hopefully there won't be a horizon. That's the whole point. There we go. There we go. Look at that one. Alright, so let's turn this off. Let's make this. Let's see here. Oh wait, I gotta. Does this thing have lights? I don't even know. Let's see. Yes, it does. Alright, let's see here. Let's see here. This doesn't seem to be. No. I know there's a way to turn them on with a keybind. I just don't know what that keybind is. Oh, there we go. Okay. So, black hole departure. When to fly a Robin D400. Don't know about that one. I don't know anything about the D400 in the sim. Let me go. Let's turn these down a little bit. These are a little bit excitable right now. The other thing is you don't want your lights to be too high at night either, because they ruin your night vision. Alright, now let's see if we can get this as black as we can here. So night departures. It's not really that dark. So night departures, the weird thing about them is, let's get ourselves turned around here. Maybe there's no light from the city, it'll help. So night departures. When you're, so we're departing out over water. Now one thing you should notice is, put our flaps up. You have these stars in the sky, right? The other thing is you have, intermittent lights here on the ground, here and there. Not, let me turn. So you can see the lights on the ground. They're sort of, here and there. If you're taking off over a city, it's one thing. It's no big deal. There's a lot of light. You're taking off over kind of dark country, and you have the stars up here, lights here and there. You got lights down here and there. Maybe you have some boats out in the water. You can all of a sudden get thinking to yourself, wait a minute, which way is up and which way is down? And so the only way to do a departure like this is to do an instrument departure. And that's one of the things about the sim is that there are certain things you can't simulate. So when you are accelerating in the real world, the liquid in your inner ear starts going backwards, and what that gives you a sensation of is a sensation of this. So you can be accelerating down the runway and you feel like you're lifting off and climbing when you're not. And so what a lot of pilots will do is they'll get airborne, but as soon as they get airborne, they feel like they're doing this. They feel like they're really, really steep, and they're not. They're, 5 degrees nose up, and they push the nose down, and they just smack right into the ground. It happens pretty regularly. So the way to do it, if you're going to do it, make sure all your engine stuff is good to go. Carb heat is off. Brakes are off. And you want to look right here. You want to look right here, and your vertical speed and your altitude, and just it's an instrument departure. Yeah, that'll get you. So power coming in, full power. And I wish it was darker. I wish there wasn't as much light, because it doesn't give us as much of the effect. Airspeed's alive, and I have done zero departures for practice. I'll tell you about that in a second. So 65, so let's climb. So you want to make sure let's say 10 degrees nose up is good. I've got positive rate of climb here. My altimeter is climbing. The altitude is increasing. And you just want to hold it. Just hold it right on that, and just keep cross-checking. Altitude's coming up. Vertical speed is still positive, right? Because you start looking out there, and it can get a little bit confusing. So, and you want to fly the runway heading 280. Again, positive climb, and you see that right there, and see you can start getting confused. And just make sure you climb straight out. Personally, I would not make a turn until you reached at least 1,000 feet. Where I might then be confident to start making my turn. And then you make your turn, you make sure your heading indicator is turning the correct way. Make sure your attitude indicator is still, nose up, altitude increasing, vertical speed is positive. And that's how you want to do it. You don't want to be goofing around with night departures. And as a matter of fact, I was talking before about the pause button. Look at the pause button. So, turn the lights off. Yeah, I mean, and so if you're looking this way, if you're climbing in this direction, let's say you're taking off towards the city, no big deal. But just imagine this being pitch black. Let's see if we can get rid of I wonder if we can get rid of the, this is pretty cool, actually. Okay, this is a little better. See that? Oh, this is much better. Well, I guess you get the point without me doing the departure again. If you're looking in this direction and you can see lights here, few lights here, it can easily start getting confusing. And that's the problem with night departures. Now let's see if we can make a night landing. Just for giggles. And my wife's gonna kill me. No, she won't. She loves me. No, she won't. of course, it is now pitch black, and I have set myself up to fly into terrain. 2.3 nautical miles, so we should be at about 1,000 feet, which is roughly what we are. But, I mean, look at this. Look how dark this is, even in the sim. Even in the sim. So 3.5 miles, 1,000 feet. We should be on a pretty decent glide slope here, glide path. Alright, carb heat in, notch of flaps. And yeah, a lovely little night descent here. Yeah, it was pretty dark in 2020. I remember I used to walk my dog on this basically out in the country where you could see this big long stretch of the New York State Thruway. And I just remember looking out on the Thruway, and there's, you know, there's just hundreds of cars going by on a normal day. And I just remember looking out, and there's like no cars anywhere. It's bizarre. Alright, 70 knots. It'd be good if you were anywhere near the center line of the runway. Remember, never land on the blue lights. That'll cost you a phone call. Blue lights of the taxiway. But there must be a crosswind. Those are the runway end identifier lights right there, by the way. Those two white flashing lights. There we go. It is a crosswind. There we go. Let's hold that off, hold that off. A little bit of right rudder. A little bit of left aileron. Smack. Smack. So, that was the ILS 10 at St. Thomas. I would love to actually show the localizer version of this, but reason says I should go see what Mrs. IslandSimPilot is doing. I don't know about you guys, but I had a good time, and hopefully you guys did as well. I certainly enjoyed this. Yeah, it was a good time, and hopefully you guys learned something, and I appreciate everybody's time. I appreciate everybody coming out and enjoying this this incredibly hot afternoon. I'm about to get a dose of reality because I'm leaving the only air-conditioned room in my house, but thanks again, everybody. And for anybody who wants to support what I'm doing on the channel, there is a link in the description for my Patreon, and you can also join the channel here on YouTube. Click the join button below. And otherwise, I just thank everybody for coming out. And I believe we will do this again tomorrow at 1 o'clock, about the same time. So hope everybody has a great rest of your day. Michael, thank you so much for coming out. I appreciate it. I know it's a long night for you. But Eddie, Michael, everybody, Mike, VirtuSim, I appreciate it, buddy. Bedbug, appreciate it, man. I really appreciate everybody coming out and spending some time with me. So you guys take care. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk soon.